In a dramatic turn for the South Caucasus, Armenia and Azerbaijan have initiated a US-brokered peace agreement in Washington mediated directly by Donald Trump. It's being hailed as a major breakthrough, but for Armenia, the implications are still unclear. Could this really open the door to economic growth or lock the country further into a new era of dependence? In this video, I will put my political science degrees to work because someone's got to do that. And using political scenario analysis, I'll break down the facts, the geopolitics, and the possible scenarios that this deal could create for Armenia.
They fought, and now they're friends, and they're going to be friends for a long time.
The two sides have published an initiated peace agreement committing to respect each other's territorial integrity and to relinquish any territorial claims. Notice how I keep mentioning that it's initiated. Well, taking into account the disagreements between Armenia and Azerbaijan, the final peace agreement might not come as quickly as many expect, with or without the Washington mediation. Upon the ratification of the agreement, both countries agreed to establish diplomatic relations, which will be a major change for both Armenia and Azerbaijan, which have been sworn enemies for decades now. And there's some mention of delimitation and demarcation, which would be crucial for the future stability between the two countries. An important point is that the agreement does not contain a binding time-bound clause for the release of prisoners of war or detained Artsakh officials. President Trump reportedly gave a verbal assurance of the return of prisoners of war, but that does not guarantee the return of dozens, including high-profile figures, which are currently in indefinite detention. Overall, it's a pretty standard peace agreement. I would say it's quite vague and does not address a lot of key issues, especially important for Armenia. Even though, being realistic, Armenia did not have the bargaining power in the first place to secure most of its claims. In addition to the agreement, Armenia and Azerbaijan jointly asked OSCE to start winding down the Minsk Group, the long-standing mediation framework co-chaired by the US, Russia, and France. This signals a shift to a new US-led format, sidelining Russia's role as the long-term peace guarantor. And finally, a central piece to this whole package, a little cherry on top, is the TRIPP corridor, a US-operated transit route through Armenia's Sunik region, connecting mainland Azerbaijan to its Nakhchivan exclave. According to some reports, it's still not official. There will be a 99-year exclusive development lease to a US company.
Armenia is also creating an exclusive partnership with the United States to develop this corridor, which could extend for up to 99 years. And then they promise in 99 years they'll extend it, right? You'll promise.
Now that we've covered all the facts, let's quickly look at some of the implications. For now, this means an end to active hostilities, re-establishment of diplomatic ties with Azerbaijan, potential revival of economic cooperation in the region, and a process of delimiting and demarcating borders. The upside is that it offers Armenia a breather, a final moment of peace after years of war. The downside of the peace agreement specifically is that there is no guaranteed release of the prisoners of war and the solidification of the return to the Soviet borders, which for Armenia and specifically for Artsakh, it means losing control over the exclave. Moreover, both of the countries are preparing for constitutional reforms, which is specifically important for Azerbaijan since Aliyev has been demanding removing language on Artsakh from Armenia's constitution, and this could be still a major bottleneck for signing the peace agreement.
Many times what we expect from Armenia with respect to our territorial integrity and their constitution. So it is known. As soon as it is done and peace agreement is signed, so there'll be no obstacle for Southern Caucasus to try to be integrated region.
Are you tired of big tech spying on you? Ads stalking you everywhere you go?
They're watching every click.
Well, take back control of your digital life with Proton. I switched to Proton Mail at the beginning of this year for this channel when I started my journey of switching to European and just in general more privacy-friendly alternatives. And honestly, I'm super content with my decision. I love the interface, the transition from Gmail was seamless due to its redirection service, and after months of use, I can confidently say that it was a great decision for my online privacy. But Proton is more than just email. Founded by scientists at the European Organization for Nuclear Research, Proton believes privacy is a fundamental human right. It's not a product to sell. It's based in Switzerland and it's 100% funded by users, so there are no ads, no venture capital involved, and no creepy tracking. They have several products, including Proton VPN with more than 8,000 servers in 112 countries worldwide. It's a high-speed VPN with no data caps. It allows you to get access to blocked content and bypass government censorship with their anti-censorship technology. The Proton Net Shield blocks ads, malware, and trackers. It allows you to use Tor over VPN to browse anonymously, and they're generous enough to offer a high-performance free version. The next product they have is Proton Mail, which I've discussed many times on this channel, and I can link one of the videos. It offers end-to-end and zero-access encryption, so that even Proton can't read your messages. It allows easy migration from Gmail with easy switch, alias features to hide your real email from spammers and trackers. Proton Mail also has built-in encrypted calendar and filters for a clean inbox, and it works perfectly on mobile, desktop, and with your own custom domain. Finally, there's Proton Pass, which is a secure password manager with built-in two-factor authenticator. It offers hide my email aliases, password health checks, and dark web monitoring. Very importantly, it supports passkeys, which is the future of login security, and it allows secure sharing of login details with family and colleagues, as well as access to password history. With over 100 million users, Proton is the largest encrypted software platform on the planet. If you're well informed about privacy-friendly tech and privacy regulations, you might have heard about the Swiss government attempting several times to make Proton compromise their privacy features. But despite pressure from some lawmakers, Proton has won several legal battles to protect your rights and has publicly committed to never compromising user privacy, no matter the cost. It was the first question that I asked Proton when they approached me, and they reassured me that the company has no intention to give up their privacy features. So yeah, Proton offers strong commitment to user privacy and just simply great products. And the best part is that you can get up to 50% off Proton products using my link. So if you want to protect your data, avoid any ads or surveillance, and support this channel, then click on the links in the description or in the comments to check out one of the Proton products. TRIPP is framed as a commercial and peace-building project. And on the positive side, it removes the immediate threat of Azerbaijan taking over the corridor by force, and it could lock in powerful external forces for transit, investment, and peace-building. So if we look at this situation short and midterm, it does bring Armenia peace and security and an opportunity to take a breather from war and focus on internal economic growth. However, when I heard about the TRIPP route, I had to raise my eyebrow. Since I'm trying to remain professional here, I will not mention how ridiculous it is that the entire world is enabling the ego of a narcissistic lunatic, putting his name into something like a transit route in a completely different country. I will not mention that. But what's important to talk about is that a 99-year exclusive foreign concession of a strategic infrastructure risks eroding Armenia's sovereignty. If it's truly going to be signed for 99 years, what it's truly doing is cementing the US influence and economic leverage over a strategic trade route within the Armenian territory. Even though we still don't have the jurisdictional details, like will Armenia fully control customs, security, policing on its own territory. And beyond all of that, TRIPP ties Armenia's transport lifeline to Washington decisions and US-Azerbaijan relations. That's when I first read about it. My initial thought was that it smelled like colonialism or neo-imperialism in a commercial form. As for the decision about the dismantling of the Minsk group, there are some tremendous geopolitical implications for all the geopolitics nerds out there. United States, Canada, Mexico. What's really happening behind the scenes is a complete redistribution of influence zones. Caucasus has been in kind of a vacuum for the last couple of years ever since Russia shifted its military focus to Ukraine. And more recently, Moscow's influence in the region has been slipping through its fingers even more with the latest tensions with Azerbaijan, including an alleged Russian strike on an Azerbaijani facility, Baku lifting its arms embargo on Ukraine, and earlier diplomatic rifts. Noticing that growing vacuum, France has stepped up its military and political support for Armenia in the recent years. But this time it was Trump who seized the opening by mediating the peace deal, which is crucial for the region, by securing a commercial foothold through TRIPP, and resuming US weapons sales to Azerbaijan. And there are many other key global players that have played their role as well. Iran has publicly opposed the TRIPP corridor, warning it undermines its security. Meanwhile, Israel remains a close arms supplier to Baku, strengthening Azerbaijan's external backing and complicating Armenia's strategic calculus. I could get deeper into this geopolitical Game of Thrones if you'd like, but for now let's focus on the initial goal of this video, which is analyzing future political scenarios for Armenia.
TRIPP will unlock strategic economic opportunities that will create long-term benefits.
And to think about Armenia's future, we can map two uncertainties. For the political axis, I decided to focus on the US dominance in Armenia's geopolitical alignment, from multipolar balance to US sole dominance. For the economic/social axis, I will focus on the economic benefit Armenia gains from TRIPP and the peace deal, from poor returns to significant growth. And using a political scenario analysis method, this is what I came up with. We have 4 scenarios depending on how those 2 dimensions play out. Scenario 1 is called the balanced opening. Here on the political axis, we're closer to the multipolar balance, so no US sole dominance, and a high economic benefit for Armenia. This means that the peace will be sustained with multipolar guarantees, so not only the US, but also EU countries, possibly France, and Armenia will be able to trade widely and retain some sovereignty. TRIPP profits will be shared under international oversight, and meanwhile, Iran's opposition will be contained through diplomacy. I decided to call the second scenario that could play out the strategic breather. In these conditions, peace will hold and TRIPP will boost trade for both parties. Prisoners of war will be mostly returned. However, since this time we're higher on the US dominance axis, the American hegemony will limit Armenia's policy independence. In these conditions, we can expect infrastructure upgrades and Western investment flow. The next scenario, with low economic benefit for Armenia and high US dominance, is called Golden Cage. In this unfavorable case for Armenia, the country gains peace but loses sovereignty. TRIPP infrastructure will benefit mainly the US and Azerbaijan, and there will be no real industrial or social improvement in Armenia. On the social side, there will be growing public discontent over prisoners of wars and concessions, and overall Armenia will fall into this high dependence on US strategic decisions. And finally, the fourth scenario is called fragile relief, with low economic benefit for Armenia and low US dominance. In this case, peace can be expected to be short-lived and economic cooperation will likely stall because Armenia will retain sovereignty, but it might face renewed threats from Azerbaijan. Because now there is no sole US hegemony within the region, multipolar influence might create friction, and there will be no coherent development strategy moving forward. We could expect internal protests over stalled prisoners of war negotiations and many other unfavorable parts of the agreement. Now that we have an idea of all the possible scenarios, let's look at the probability terms. I would estimate that the Golden Cage scenario will be most likely, followed by strategic breather, fragile relief, and balanced opening, which in my opinion is the least likely because, quite frankly, it would require unlikely multipolar guarantees and genuinely equitable economic sharing, which is, again, I don't think that's the case here. So based on all of this, I do believe that Armenia is quite likely to fall into the Golden Cage scenario, as sad as it is, because believe me, I would be very happy to be proven wrong, and this might happen. I'm just a girl. I would be so happy if Armenia could find a balanced opening or gain a strategic breather, but given the imbalance of power and the current world state, I do find it quite unlikely. If the TRIPP arrangement ends up signed for 99 years, I do believe that it's quite likely that the US will gain strong, sustained economic, commercial, and diplomatic leverage for decades. The dismantling of the Minsk group, which included Russia and France, as well as Russia's dwindling influence, will leave a lot fewer balancing powers in this scenario. I do have to mention that Russia's economic influence over Armenia is unmatched, but I do see the US gaining more and more economic leverage over the years. As for our economic dimension, the economic benefits for Armenia, I do think that there might be a short-term uptick in trade and infrastructure activity, but realistically much of the strategic and financial gain will likely flow to the US and Azerbaijan, given the 99-year TRIPP exclusivity, Armenia's smaller economic base, and Azerbaijan's oil influence. In terms of the social side, within this scenario, currently I see a lot of celebration and happiness in Armenia regarding the end of the hostilities. But in my opinion, this is only short term because the absence of a firm written prisoner of war guarantee and the possible constitutional changes to appease to Azerbaijan could fuel domestic resentment and erode public trust in Armenia. In this scenario, we can also predict a high dependency risk because Armenia's critical root and part of its economic lifeline will be under foreign control, which makes it vulnerable to Washington decisions and possible changes and shifts in the US-Azerbaijan relations. So wrapping up, I hope I didn't bore you too much with political language. I do think that the short-term implications of these changes for Armenia will be net positive because it will lead to peace, new trade deals, infrastructure investment, and a new security architecture dominated by the US. But we do have to keep in mind the structural long-term security risks, like an almost century-long exclusive corridor concession, sidelining of Russia without a stable multipolar replacement, Iran's open hostility, and most importantly, potential erosion of Armenia's sovereignty. Whether this becomes a strategic breather or a golden cage will depend on whether the agreement will flow into a truly multilateral framework with enforceable human security guarantees and equitable economic benefits. Unfortunately, given Armenia's complicated geopolitical position and almost non-existent bargaining power, it's very hard to guarantee that this doesn't turn into a US-Azerbaijan-centric arrangement that Armenia has very little power to reshape. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching this video, and let me know in the comments what you think about this topic and which scenario, in your opinion, is the most likely to play out. Thank you again, and see you in the next one. Bye!